Don't leave your save stranded on PS4. All right, so if you are wondering what Chris is doing there, he's doing the mouth chant version of our intro at halftime in demonic speed that we heard.
Right before we found out our grandmother sold all our weapons and we have to fight an evil army with sticks.
Yeah, that's exactly what... Dude, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, you're really on key here. Hello and welcome to Triangle Square, the PlayStation podcast. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me, as always, is Mr. Saul
Bridges, bringing you guys lucky episode 230.
230, and of course, our new addition. Eventually, he's not going to be so new. He's been around for a while. I think at this point, we can just say our other host, Chris Figs. What's up, buddy?
Hey, what's going on, Brett? How are you?
You notice how I didn't make you say your name this week? You kind of got stumbled last week.
Yeah, it really threw me off. I was not planning on doing that.
Everything fell apart last week. Okay, this is the first week we're back in the swing of things, being together in the same actual place, which is the way I much prefer this. The more people you introduce into a Zencaster call, the worse it gets, you know?
Yeah.
So the less we can keep it, the better. But if you are new to the show, stick around. About middle of the show, we talk about where you can be part of the community's take section, where we ask you guys in the community your thoughts on the subjects that we are talking about, as well as where you can find us and listen to us or watch us, depending on what your preferences are. But you got to start the show off the right way, which is a time-honored tradition of Chris lobbing it to you again. What you been playing this week?
On PS5, I've been playing Miles Morales. On PS4, I haven't played anything else really. I played a little bit of Kenna, and but it's been Miles Morales and Phasmophobia this week. So
let me hit you with a excuse me. Let me hit you with a for science question, because I noticed that dang it, in our chats that we had in our other Discord, you were saying that you didn't really notice a big difference between Miles Morales on PS4 and PS5. Now, for science, did you actually download the PS5 version and kind of play between them to see what it felt like? Or is it just more of the way your brain remembers it? It didn't feel
the way my brain remembers it. Like, it's very clear that like that ending, you know, when he's all the electricity and stuff, it's like, okay, like this clearly doesn't look as good. But like playing the game, I've noticed little to no difference. It's in 60 FPS. It looks good. Like the only issue is there's load times, and the load times are 2-3 seconds at most.
Oh, I didn't really think about that. Does the PS4 version on PS5 still run at 60? Because I don't think on PS4 Pro it ran at 60. No matter what you did.
I don't have an issue with it. And I know based on my experience with Kenna that I have an issue with 30 FPS now. So
did you not turn Kenna on to performance?
I did, but the cutscenes are in 30 FPS.
The cutscenes are in 30, and that is a little jarring.
It's incredibly jarring because they look the same, ostensibly the same anyway. So you're playing the 60 FPS, looks gorgeous, then all of a sudden it cuts in half for a cutscene. I'm like, why did you do this?
My assumption is that the reason that they really did that is because they cranked the effects to 11 and all this different, you know, like they switch to a high detail model and stuff whenever they go to the cutscenes. And I think it's obvious, but at the same time, it is no matter what jarring to just suddenly be like, oh, I'm running in 60 and now you cut to 30 without any kind of transition screen.
Yeah.
I think that's the most thing. If it like dropped to black for a second and then came up in 30 frames per second, I don't think your brain would be like, whoa. But it caught me yesterday too. Game's gorgeous.
It is. But I was noticing like, oh my God, like it looks like a slideshow now. And I'm like, why did you do this to me? I don't understand.
It's weird because it does look more cinematic. And I think that that's what they were aiming for, is that they wanted it to look like in the cutscenes you literally are just watching an animated movie.
Yeah. See, to me, it didn't look more cinematic. Was the right
move that way.
It looked like jarring, you know.
I mean, I think that's fair. I heavily debated last night. Do I just want to play the game in fidelity mode just so everything's 30 frames per second and has that, or do I want to just play the majority of the game 60? And I'm just going to leave it 60.
Yeah, I don't want to play anything in 30 FPS that I'm not like, okay, this is a PS3 game. I know what I'm sacrificing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, I know what I'm getting into.
Yeah, I'm good on that now.
Well, you know, I've often had the thing where I feel like game companies, as best as possible, should try to steal good ideas from the other side. I think that's always should be the case, right? If somebody comes out and they're doing something that's smart, then you take it. And that happens sometimes. I mean, like, we saw in last gen, the Xbox controller come out. Initially, the Xbox One controller was the normal infrared controller. And then whenever they released the S, they switched to a Bluetooth controller. And in that Bluetooth controller, they included the 3.5 jack where you didn't have to have the adapter anymore, just like PlayStation did. Which I think was because they saw PlayStation doing that and thought, this is a great idea. Let's just do it. While we're doing a system refresh anyway, let's take the time. I always hoped last gen that PlayStation would take the snap ability that Xbox eventually got rid of and put it on their side, but it never happened. But right now, this gen, I'm hoping that the FPS boost that Xbox is doing with the Series X is something that PlayStation can find a way to make happen. I would love that because it'd be really cool, which of course that would also require PlayStation to get far more in-depth backwards compatibility than they currently have. Because what are you really going to do? I mean, most of the PS4 games are already getting some kind of boost to 60 frames per second, or you can play them off the disc with no update and you can play the unlocked frame rate, which lets you get to 60 like with Assassin's Creed Unity. But it would be awesome if we get to the point where either on the server or even on the system side or on the server side for PS Now, if they could find a way when you're playing a PS3 game, it can internally boost the frames per second and give you a streamed 60 frames per second of like Fallout 3 or Resistance 3 or Killzone 2 or whatever,
Yeah. I mean, I agree that would be nice. I don't know. For me, it's one of those things like most of the time, if I'm going back, I'm playing on the original console, so...
I agree. And that's normally what I'm doing too. But if you want to push me into actually using PS Now as somewhat of an extended backwards compatibility solution, one way to get me to at least really seriously try it out would be like a frame rate boost. Now that you can stream in 1080p, and if you can run at 60 frames per second, you might actually keep me from turning my actual PlayStation 3 on that's directly beside my PS5. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So... that's something I hope for, but it is weird to see that. I don't know. It would have been cool if Kena would have found a way to, or Kena, which is what I've been calling it this whole time. And then I started to relinquish to everybody else calling it Kena. Turns out your boy was right. But it would have been cool if it would have been like, do you want the cutscenes to look a little worse, but run in 60 frames per second?
Yeah.
My assumption here is that they must be pre-rendered. Otherwise, why would it lock?
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know. It's just one of those things where I noticed, especially playing Miles, I'm like, if this isn't in 4K, I don't care. It looks fine, but you need to handle the FPS properly. And
yeah, because that's the thing. People were talking about resolution like crazy coming into this generation, and I know that's what consoles have always focused on. But man, control over frames per second is a huge deal.
Oh, yeah.
And I have yet to see a game where the fluidness of 60 frames per second outweighs the slightly better image clarity of fidelity. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. Anyway. So Phasmo, fun times.
Yes, we've been having fun during Phasmo.
Yeah, if you want to hear Chris get incredibly freaked out, it's good times.
At this point, I'm just dying so much that I'm not even scared. I'm just like, oh, crap, I hear the breathing, taking my headphones off, and I'm turning around.
Just shh. Yeah, no, what got me is how scared Ben gets to, and I don't mean in a bad way, right? But
yeah.
Ben that one night was like, I don't want to go back in. And I was trying to truck in and be like, we're going to figure this out, even if it means I have to die.
Yeah.
And it was like, I really don't want to. Please don't make me.
Yeah.
Good times. All right, Saul, what you been up to?
This week, I've played a couple of new games. I, first of all, have played the demo for one of the main topics we're going to be talking about today, which is the Yoko Taro game that got announced at the Nintendo Direct, the Dragon Isles.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is phenomenal so far with the demo. It's definitely going to break my day one purchase thing that I've been going on lately because it is just that good of a game to me. I love card-based RPGs like this. And the fact they somehow took a turn-based card combat system and D&D and Yoko Taro's personality and put it into a game is just amazing. The music alone, like the second the music came on while me and you're watching the direct, we knew, hey, what is this?
Well, and I remembered that like about a month ago, there was a leak about Yoko Taro's next game being a card game. And I remember that it had the name and everything. So I remember the key art, but I didn't know how it worked or what it looked like because that was the extent of the leak.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I thought it was phenomenal. I was super excited. And I downloaded the demo yesterday on Saturday, played through pretty much to where it forces you to stop playing. And I would highly recommend anybody who's interested in Yoko Taro and likes Dungeons and Dragons and or just high fantasy storytelling, go download the demo.
I definitely intend on playing this demo. And I say that a lot, but there's times where I just don't get to work it in. I intended to play the Tales of Arise demo before it came out, but at this point, Chris bought it. I could just play it. There's like no reason for me to play the demo instead of just trying the game. I guess the only upside is the demo doesn't give you trophies. So if you decide you don't like it, you don't have a 3% trophy list.
Yeah, that's true.
Speaking of which, is that one of the demos that lets you carry your progress forward, or is it like a weird slice of gameplay demo? Did you play it?
No, I just wanted to go straight into Tales, so I didn't touch it.
Because I'm wondering, games like that, whenever you transfer over, if you got trophies, does it just account for it and say, okay, pop them?
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think of that. I wonder how that would work.
I mean, I really doubt in a demo you're going to get any hard trophy, to be honest. But I mean,
well, like I wonder with like Temtem, like that's in beta and it doesn't have trophies right now. But if I played it, would it retroactively unlock everything, or would it be like, hey, thanks for playing the beta, do everything again?
I would imagine that you would have to at least log into the game and like load, and then the load would do a check and be like, oh, well, the trophy check says that, okay, you have to have 160 Temtem or whatever they're called. And then it looks and goes, well, he's got 160 of them. Okay, pop that one. You've got to have been to this place. Look at his map, shows he's cleared it. Go pop that trophy. It should be kind of like what happens when you load your save into Spider-Man for PS5, and it's just like, oh, you've already got all these? Okay. Let me do it again.
You would hope, right? But
well, it's even more interesting that you literally don't even have to load into the game. From the menu, as soon as the save comes in, it's like, oh, we've checked everything about your save, and it hits all of these things.
Yeah.
Which I guess goes to show how you can manage saves, which I remember on 360, I had a friend who figured out how to basically use their save and somehow on your account give you all the Gears of War trophies if you were playing in co-op. And so I remember we were playing and he's like, I can get you all the Gears of War trophies. So well, he's like, yeah, I've got them on my account already. And I figured this way out where all you got to do is be in a co-op game with me, do this. I think we went out of bounds somewhere and then he popped something and then I just saw my achievement thing just boop, boop, boop. And I was like, that's one of the odd, that was of course really early days because that was Gears of War 1.
Oh God, wow. Yeah.
It might have been 2, but I'm pretty sure it was 1.
But in terms of the rest of the games that I played this week, I started up Dragon Age 11.
Started? Did you restart? Or did you like continue playing from the demo?
No, like I bought it on Switch and I started it up. Like if typically like I played the demo so long ago, I'm just going to restart. There's no reason to, I didn't want to forget any potential story beats that there was.
Yeah.
So I just went ahead and restarted that. So I'm enjoying that game pretty much. And that's kind of just been like my couch game for the week because I've been playing Dishonored as well, but I haven't really played a lot.
Remastered?
Yes. And I really haven't gone in and played through a lot of it. I pretty much have got past. This game's so old, but I've been yelled at for spoiling 10-year-old games before. I got past the first light wall, I should say. I'm very early on. Like I'm 2 hours in at most. And
the game's not that long.
Side quest. No, it's not.
In hindsight, it's kind of
like 10 hours, 12 hours.
It's like Deathloop. It's as long as you make it. That's kind of all arcade games, right? They can be incredibly short, but it's how long does your choice of dealing with this problem take?
And the side quest, because I forgot about Granny's side quest in that game. And I've been doing those too, just so you can min-max pretty much the only way you can in that game with runes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But other than that, I haven't really played much. really at all. What have you been up to?
Deathloop, and of course I beat Deathloop, got to the final loop. I got this itch where I've always talked about how I would love to platinum an Arcane game because I really love their games, but it's always just been like so daunting. And Liam, one of our listeners and friends, has always talked about if you just abuse the checkpoint system, then you can get through some of the crazy ones where it's like beat the entire game without being seen, and then another trophy of beat the entire game without killing anyone, which of course you can stack if you do it right. But that sounds so crazy because it's like, dude, that's like anywhere from 12 to 15 hours. And so you get into that. What I like about Deathloop is that there's similar trophies, but because the game is broken into 4 bespoke times of day, and then there's 4 map areas that have those 4 different day states. If you think, I can go to this time period, knock out these trophies. I literally got 6 trophies in one time period on one map the other day because I just stacked them all up.
Oh, wow.
And it just, so I'm closer than I've ever been in one of those games. I'm at 71% right now, I think. I'm still aiming for it. Also, I found something I was playing, and it's I don't even think it's much of a spoiler. I was just playing, and I was going around trying to do something different. I was trying to pop a trophy where you have to kill 3 people at a party without being seen and then leave. And I was going through, and I ended up killing way more than the 3 people for the trophy because I just started having so much fun. I fell behind this sign, and I saw a button. I said, "What's this button do?" And it opens up a pit in the floor, and people fall into a meat grinder. So I kept waiting for them to come up on the stage. I would throw something or activate something that would get their attention. They'd start walking on the stage. I'd hide behind the thing, wait for them to hit the stage, and then hit the button, and they'd fall to their death, and it would alert everyone else, and they just kept coming up. And by the time I was done, I killed like 40 people at this party with the meat grinder. So
that's kind of cool. I like
times.
That game. I don't know why, but just watching you play for like the however long it was, it reminds me of the style and humor of a game that was in the PS3 generation.
Yeah.
I maybe it's just because a lot of the games in that time era to me have kind of that same like humoristic era, like or side. Like it almost reminds me of Portal in like a kind of a sadistical way.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it definitely has an odd sense of humor and character writing and whatnot. And I think that's pretty true of most of Arcane's games and really all of the people that came from Looking Glass, because I think that's pretty true of BioShock. BioShock has very odd sensibilities to all of the games. And that BioShock, Ken Levine was part of Looking Glass, just like most of Arcane's founding people were part of Looking Glass. And that's why those games are very similar. But it's a great game. I'm having a good time. But after deciding I wanted to go for that, I originally intended to play Kena, whatever. And then last night after playing Phasmo, Chris was like, I'm going to go play it so I could talk about it tomorrow. I said, yeah, I guess me too. And I ended up playing quite a bit of it. I got drawn in. The world is super cute and charming. I absolutely adore the rot and everything about them. Agreed. And as you continue and you get more of them and you have new abilities, it's not an original thought or anything. It's such a great way of describing the game. The game feels so much like a Zelda game in a year where we aren't getting anything Zelda-wise for its 25th anniversary, I guess, until... Because isn't Breath of the Wild 2022, the second one?
I think so, yeah.
Didn't they say?
I don't think
2022.
Yeah, I don't think there's a set release date. Is there? Did they actually say 2022, Chris? Do you know?
I thought they did, but I'm not 100% sure.
I felt like they did as well.
It might have been so that like they said it, and I'm just like, that's not coming out, so I disregarded it.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it says the release window is 2022.
Yeah, I figured as much. But the game feels very much like early 3D Zeldas in terms of the way it chooses to use gameplay. But it's got this thing that while we're talking about, and we're going to get into it in a little bit more, so I'm going to keep it brief here. But it's got this thing where it's not as much as these other games, and it's not that these games don't exist at all, because there's been a relatively new Pikmin. But speaking of games that have odd genres, I would say this is more of a mechanic. The rot kind of remind me of using in oh god, I just had it. Overlord. In Overlord, you could control the little minions that you get by selecting them and then using the right analog stick to just make them run around and do whatever you wanted. And I don't know, you're not far enough yet, Chris, that I'm aware of, but you can you can control the rot, make them move stuff around for you. At one point, you can make them go into like their primordial form where they all glue together and look like a little snake, and you can control them and get them to beat stuff up and attack enemies or break down barriers. And it just gives me that feeling of, I don't even know what you call those games like Pikmin and Overlord, because clearly they have, at least Overlord has an overarching genre.
I mean,
But then it has this
Sims,
back
right?
end mechanic, I guess.
That's
I don't
what
know.
I've always thought of them as.
I think Pikmin, I've never played a Pikmin game, so I really don't know. Outside looking in, I just thought they were kind of puzzle games with that as the primary mechanic.
I can see
Pretty
that
much,
too.
yeah.
So, I mean, if that's the case, then
Pikmin and Overlord are the same. At least the original Overlord are the exact same game, almost. Like
so
in
you
terms of
control
what you do.
control an actual character,
Yes,
and
control,
then you send out the Pikmin to do whatever it is you need to do.
yes, you control Olimar or oh dang, I forgot his partner's name. You control, depending on the scenario, you control Olimar, and you typically have a whistle that you can get all the Pikmin to come to you. Pikmin have roles, so like the red ones are strong ones, if I remember correctly, and they can lift up heavier objects.
Yeah.
Or it requires less, and then to lift up heavier objects, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's been
So
a
you're
while since I
right.
played.
So Overlord's
Pikmin.
real similar, except for Overlord is still an RPG mixed in and all that,
Right.
like an action RPG. So speaking of that, that's a game I want to come back. But yeah, I'm having a great time with it so far. Game looks and runs beautiful. And for all the people that were worried about, at least the people who were trying to review bomb it because they didn't want PlayStation to keep making these games, I want to save this real statement as that. But right now I'm kind of thinking it'd be pretty sweet if PlayStation just bought out Ember Labs, because this is really cool and I like this game.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
PlayStation's got nothing but bangers right now. You know what I mean?
Honestly, Deathloop reviewed super well. Great game. Kina
right.
reviewed super well. Great game. Oh, you don't have to like a game for it to review well, Chris. It's okay.
Wait, what game do you
I
not
was
like?
just saying.
It's not even that he doesn't like Deathloop. He played the tutorial and then moved on. And he's just kind of like, I don't know that I want to get back to it at this moment.
Yeah.
Which I think is fair. The weird thing is I still think it does tutorials better than a lot of games. The downside to it is that the tutorial is nothing like the majority of how the game plays.
Yeah.
Because the tutorial, when you die, or even if you don't die, it just keeps pushing you through to a new area and a different time of day until you've done one full loop.
I also got to be honest. So far, I just don't really enjoy the characters, that seems like I'm on the.
You are certainly on the out.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah, but I also don't think the game does a lot to make you like them. I think it's the two characters that really matter is Colt and Juliana.
Yeah.
Then the rest of them are just figuring out their weird character traits and then just seeing who they are, which is interesting and fun.
Well,
and you kind of build like dossiers on each person as you walk around and like collect more information.
Mm-hmm.
So it really, I mean, I do think the characters and the writing is really good, definitely as you get into the game.
But
it's more of how it's like line, you pick up information and discover stuff.
Yeah, down the line it makes sense. At the beginning, Juliana just grates on me. I'm like, dude, leave me alone. Like, Colt, gotcha, Colt. Shut up. I couldn't stand it. That was part of why I dropped it.
It's more interesting how that ends up playing out.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Also,
I need to play more, but
you need to play the Protect the Loop mode.
Yeah.
I have been having a blast, dude. I started playing it just because I wanted to give it a try. Then I realized there was 2 trophies I needed to get from it. So I ended up knocking those out anyway. But I have so much fun. And I love the invasion mechanic. I leave the game on online mode constantly.
Really?
I want to be invaded. The only downside is that because there's so many people that want to do that, but so many people are turning the game to offline mode or friends only mode. Most of the time, as soon as you load into a map and go out of the side of the tunnels, you're going to get invaded. But it makes it so fun, man. I have only died once from an opposing Juliana. And when you play as Juliana, the more that you actually go through and protect the loop, you level up based off of different perks or different things that you end up doing throughout the game. So, like if you survive a certain amount of time, if you kill Colt without him getting damage on you at all, or if you do more damage to him than he does to you, all of those things, and you level up, and that's what gives you new things to use as Juliana. Really cool. I love the extra layer.
It almost reminds me of I think Watch Dogs, the original, had one of the best multiplayer modes ever.
Yeah,
It was super cool at how that multiplayer mode was done. And that's similar to this one. Like you hop in, you kind of blend in, you kind of want to go find the person and kill them. Where in Watch Dogs, it was kind of like the opposite. In Watch Dogs, you invade somebody's world and you're like, well, actually, no, it was about the same. You want to blend in, but you don't kill Aiden, if I remember correctly. You have a time limit. And Aiden was like scrambling to find you, but you look like a normal civilian.
So you win if you just don't get caught.
Yeah. So like I would go sit like in a car or something, or if like I got invaded, I'd be like looking for people sitting in the car, just sitting there. I'm like, oh, that's a player. There's no way that NPC is just sitting there like that.
Yeah.
It was a really fun game of cat and mouse.
Yeah, and actually, if you think about that too, whenever Juliana invades, it locks the tunnels, and so you either have to kill her and then hack the tunnel, or hack the tunnel, don't kill her, and escape. But it is fun because you have this thing where you can. For her only, it's called Masquerade, and you can go around to any NPC if you apply that slab, and you can go to them and you can just hit L1 and you'll take their face and swap their appearance. So the people could find you walking around as an NPC because you switch to they look like Juliana, you look like them, and they may attack an NPC thinking it's you, or you can sneak up on them because they don't realize you're Juliana. They think you're just a normal NPC. It's pretty cool. I really like the game. And I'm really surprised that they were able to pull off a really good online mode when they've, as far as I know, I don't think they've ever had online in their games. I didn't play a lot of Prey, but I'm thinking of going back and trying Prey again.
I think did Prey. Okay, with the way Prey worked, I want to go back and play it too, because I played the demo when it came out, and the mimics in that game that would have made for a sick multiplayer mode.
Actually,
almost
that
like
prop hunt, yeah.
But it's like you're a deadly mimic instead.
Ah, God, that would have been cool. And there's so many cool weapons. Like, dude, can you imagine multiplayer in that way with a glue gun? That'd be great, dude. The glue gun was super cool.
It was.
Like, for as much as I didn't end up beating that game, but I did like what I played. I just got disenchanted with it pretty quickly. But I don't know. I'm loving this so much. It's making me want to go back. So, yeah, my advice to everybody, play Deathloop. And also that ending, the more I think about it and the more I've continued to play and get new dialogue pieces, there's some big implications.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited to play that on your Series X.
I don't think it has to do with a sequel. It's more about something else. So,
see, now I want to know because I don't think I'll ever beat this game.
I'll tell you off if you really, because it may not matter anyway. But I'll tell you off camera.
Okay, sounds good.
When no one else can hear it, I don't want to hear it. So. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and head into the news for the episode. But before we do, remember, this show is brought to you by you guys. So if you would like to support us with more than just your time, which I promise we are always very thankful for, consider heading over to patreon.com/Nartech and giving as little as $1 per month. It helps a lot. Lets us do this show without digging into our own pockets. And we appreciate all of you who do so. So getting into the news, we have... the first thing up, which was kind of what Saul was talking about, revealed during last week's Nintendo Direct, we finally got a true reveal for Yoko Taro's next game, Voice of Cards, The Isle Dragon Roars, after leaks had shown off the name and art a month or two ago. The game is a card-based RPG, calling it a card BG because why wouldn't you? With emphasis on the story. I wish that's how they would have marketed it. That
would have been good.
With emphasis on story. And the game will release as a digital-only title, so that's a little unfortunate, on October 28th for $30. Great price. But a free demo is available now that acts as a prologue to the story and can give you a taste of gameplay, so go check it out. That's what Saul said he played and enjoyed. If that interests you at all, I love it. I love the idea even. Also, the fact that it's like, if I'm not mistaken, Saul, the demo probably at least lets you do this. Is there like an overworld that you move throughout that has cards stacked on top of each other to play as terrain?
Well, they're not really stacked on top of each other; they're stacked next to each other.
Well, that's what I mean. Like kind of like laid out side by side. In the tile.
And they're like face down. So like when you step on one or step near them, they start flipping over, right? And then eventually, like one will flip over and it'll be like a treasure chest, and you get to see what that is. And there's another one that flips over. I forget. It's called like a rock or something. It's just like a rock item, and then a dice rolls. And if it rolls low, it becomes a monster. If it rolls high,
man.
It's really cool.
Okay.
I think that this game is going to be a contender for one of my game of the years if it plays out like this.
Yeah, I like that extra edition where it's like you're keeping the card theme throughout everything. Like, because I'm assuming that means that you're like a card that moves, or at least you're a card that has an avatar that you move throughout the world with.
Yep. And like that's kind of what it is. It's like your little like tabletop piece or whatever. It is your crew. And eventually, like you'll just like a normal world map in any like RPG game, you're traversing upon it. Well, you may move to a square that flips over that's normal terrain, but a random battle will happen.
Oh, yeah.
And what this game is, I was actually shocked because I didn't know anything about the demo going in. And I don't remember if the direct said this or not, but it is, in fact, a prologue demo. You are not playing as the main characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're playing as a story that precedes the actual game.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Good use of demo, right? Let me figure out the things without having to worry about spoiling anything.
Yep. That is.
All right, well, that's cool.
Good.
Next thing up, Life is Strange Remastered Collection has received a new release date after being delayed, now hitting on February 1st, 2022. The Remastered Collection, in case you didn't know, includes the original Life is Strange and its prequel Before the Storm. So hop on that whenever you want to if you've never played those games. It does not include Life is Strange 2. Solid game, though. And True Colors is out right now. If you buy a certain edition of True Colors, you actually get the Remastered Collection included. Next thing up, ahead of its October 16th DC fandom event, Warner Brothers Games and DC revealed the official key art for Rocksteady's Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which will be receiving a new reveal during the event. Hopefully that means gameplay and not just another CG trailer. Otherwise, man, did they show this game way too early, but we'll definitely see. Chris, what do you think of that, buddy?
I'm excited for this game. The key art is key art. But
the key art is key art.
I think the game's going to be good. I like Rocksteady, and I like the potential of this idea. We'll see.
In your mind, what do you think this game is, like gameplay wise? If you had to put something on it without seeing anything yet, what kind of game would you consider this to be? With
my worry is that this is the same type of thing as Avengers, and they don't pull it off, because I think Avengers is a good idea that they don't do well. So I hope that they figure it out for this.
Well, what would you consider Avengers? I mean, because a looter shooter, but where you don't always have to be shooting.
Yeah, it's a looter smasher, I guess. Looter puncher.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I guess you shoot depending on who you are, and I'm assuming in this game you would shoot depending on who you are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, what's Harley Quinn going to do? Shoot you, hit you with a hammer, blow you up somehow?
That definitely not untrue.
I mean, at least maybe as Killer Shark, you can actually go through and bite people's heads off or something. That'd be pretty cool.
Nom noms. Did you watch that? Did you watch either of you watch Suicide Squad yet?
Saul did.
The new one, yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
I intended to, and then the day I went to go watch it was the day after it left HBO. So I was
what's
like,
wrong with you?
I never watched the original. If it makes you feel better,
I fell asleep to the original.
That doesn't make me feel better. The original sucks.
Look, I intended to watch it. It'll be back on HBO.
Myself in the balls over and over again. Ooh.
Yeah, this looks interesting, but I don't know. It's the weird thing for me right now is that it's been so long since Rocksteady have put out a full scale game that I feel like that builds a slightly weird expectation, but one I'm not trying to hold them to, because it's not. I'm not sure whose fault that is. I mean, they put out Batman VR, which was interesting, but it was some of these years spent on trying to figure out what game they were going to do next and prototyping, and Warner Brothers just being like, nah.
Yeah. The thing that surprises me is that they're doing a game that's connected to the Arkham games, but this isn't it. And that's weird. Because the Arkham series is there. I'm pretty positive.
You're saying that the game that's coming from Warner Brothers Montreal is part of the Arkham series. I got you.
Yeah, Gotham Knights. Is part of the Arkham series, but this isn't. And the Arkham series is theirs.
They're saying it's not. They're saying it's not connected to Rocksteady's Arkham games.
Really? Okay, then I'm lying.
Well, because people were talking about how it makes no sense that like Bruce is around. Like there's things that don't line up with the other games. Like Barbara's there, but she's not paralyzed. Presumably, but we know that in the Arkham series she is. So True. I don't know.
Okay. I guess I was wrong. My interpretation was that Gotham Knights was a continuation.
Well, I would have thought so too. So I don't blame you. And I mean, WB Montreal were the people that did Batman Arkham Origins.
Well, that was the weird part to me, is that Rocksteady acts like that game doesn't exist, and then they're like, but you can make the continuation if you want. Like, well, okay.
Well,
Seems
yeah,
weird.
Arkham Origins is one of those games where like there's technically nothing that's not canon in it, but also the rest of the games don't rely on the story from that at all.
Yeah.
You know? So is what it is, I suppose. We'll see. I mean, we got half a month to figure out what this game will actually be. If I again hope it's some type of gameplay.
Yeah, they need to. I don't know. I'm a big fan of the evil superhero thing. Like Injustice, I think, is one of the better comic book stories.
Sure. Yeah.
So I hope that they pull this off. I really do.
All right. See, next thing going up. Many months ago, outlets and YouTubers were expressing concern with the CMOS, whatever, battery issue present in both the PS4 and PS5, that when the internal battery died, the system would have games crash on startup and wouldn't let trophies pop, as the internal clock had no way to determine when they happened. Sony promised to look into a fix, and a new PS4 update seems to make good on that promise, as update 9.0 has games playing without issue, even with a CMOS battery dead, and even allows players to earn trophies. Though the trophies continue not to show a time or date of earning, which is pretty interesting. Play all of your trophy list on a dead CMOS battery PlayStation so no one can know when you earn them. I guess you could.
You can do that now, just going offline.
I mean, but your PlayStation still has an internal thing of it. And then whenever you upload, it shows when you earned it. You know what I mean?
Fair. Yes.
So PS5 will likely see a similar update if it wasn't already hidden in the latest thing, because this wasn't even something that Sony put out and were like, hey, we did this. Somebody just happened to be on Twitter and be like, hey, my PlayStation 4 that wasn't working is now working and earning trophies with a dead CMOS. Apparently, what's funny is the guy who was talking about it said the date that the PlayStation reverts back to when the battery's dead is like 1964.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was somewhere in the 60s. It might have been 69, but I remember thinking, what an odd date for a computer system to fall back onto.
Yeah.
Which means it had to have been hard coded in there for it to be like, if you don't recognize a date, just say it's 1964. Wait a minute. Is the PS4 part of like a meta for Deathloop right now? Is that what's going on?
I think so. This is advertising for Deathloop.
Yeah, deep advertising. Speaking of that, actually, and being meta, Sony's cross-gen games continue to have varying ways of handling save transfers, and Kojima's re-release of Death Stranding is probably the most odd, as it requires you to download the PS4 original, trek to a delivery terminal within the game, go into the settings there to select save transfer, and be sure that you have no existing jobs open before transferring. Now, an already odd way of handling this that you've just heard gets potentially frustrating with some jobs when you cannot cancel out of them. Some of them require that you finish them in order to actually clear them from your list, meaning that you might have to actually play the game for a couple of hours before you can transfer it over. And the argument here for this being Kojima at his normal Kojima meta self, as plenty of people before here have specified and talked about, is that Kojima's gotten so meta that in his game about delivering things, you have to literally deliver your PlayStation 4 file to your PlayStation 5.
I really like it. I don't know. I think it's funny.
Is it weird and obtuse? Yes. But the more I think about it, I feel like this had to have been purposeful.
Yeah, it seems like it very much fits the theme and everything.
Well, you know what? Where Blue Box lets us down, Kojima comes back around. So,
we'll see.
Sadly,
maybe
that he was involved in all that. Yeah. Maybe when Blue Box lets you down, it ends up being Kojima coming around. So
just to let you down. We
still don't know. Yeah. Kojima comes out. I'd like to announce that Blue Box had nothing to do with me and that they've gone under as a studio.
What would be funny is if he goes, yeah, I was working with Blue Box. I don't work with them anymore.
Oh my, dude. What if this would have been the thing where when you go into the game and you go to transfer your save and you do, suddenly your system tells you that there's been an update to the Blue Box Abandon app. And when you load it in,
oh my God,
dude, that actually would have been pretty sick. No way that would happen, but that would have been, I say no way. That could have happened. You could have made it to where it's like, check to make sure that this has been transferred before you download this update.
They could definitely do it. At this point, I put nothing past Kojima and Sony.
No, nor do I. It would have been more funny if this time around it really was just like, guys, just quit and let us use the name at this point. Like, it was never actually connected, but now they're going to make it connected.
That would be pretty good too.
Yeah, wasted opportunity there. Hassan, what have you done here?
If that is your real name.
If that
Hassan
is
fake him on.
Yeah, that looks that was cool. I mean, I think it's a weird way of going about it. I intend to get back around to this game. I just don't know when. I know Saul wants to play it too.
Absolutely. I'm going to play it. I was telling Brett that like that game came out right around like the time that like Thanksgiving was happening. And where we work, we're fortunate enough to be able to get like Black Friday and Thanksgiving off. So that work week always ends on a Wednesday. So that work week for me, like Wednesday night was like Friday night, and I started into Death Stranding. Thursday was Thanksgiving. Played more of it there. Friday, I played it all day up until me and Brett went Black Friday shopping. And then, of course, Saturday and Sunday played it more. And like that was a fantastic experience. So I'm super excited to play it again.
So it's been 2 years, but is this going to be like your bi-yearly seasonal game now? Every 2 years you get into a little Death Stranding kick?
It's, for me, Kojima games are kind of rough to play over and over and over again. It's too close apart. And honestly, if this was not coming out in the state that it's coming out in, I probably wouldn't be replaying it this soon.
Oh, like with new things to experience within it?
Yeah, and that's kind of why for me, like I think that even though, you know, Metal Gear Solid 5 is not a fantastic Metal Gear game, I still think it's a fantastic Metal Gear game in the regards of like, I could replay this. I have the freedom to be able to kind of do like what I want to. And I think it's fantastic in that regard.
Well, I'll give it this. While I don't love it as a Metal Gear Solid game, it kind of reminds me of why I think Deathloop, and in a similar way, right? Since it's an open world, whereas Dishonored's more kind of hub based, but it's that same thing where it doesn't feel weird to just hop in and screw around. Yeah, like that's what makes Deathloop work so well. Normally, I would be like, oh, I don't want to play Kena because I'm still trying to finish Deathloop, but I can play Kena all I want and then come home for lunch one day and be like, I don't want to get too far into Kena in the middle of lunch and be weighed down, so I'll just hop into Deathloop and try and knock out a few trophies and have a good time.
Yeah.
You know? Or just have a good time if you're not worried about trophies. You know, it's an easy game to continue to play. If people weren't able to, I wish you couldn't turn off the ability to be invaded. Like you had to do it the really complicated way, go and literally disconnect your PlayStation while you're playing it. Because I think that would be a fun lunchtime thing. Come home on lunch, cook your food up, and then sit down and just invade 2 or 3 times and have a good time. But
I like the idea. I would personally absolutely hate if you couldn't turn that off.
Oh, I know that people would, but I mean that's kind of what Dark Souls does. I mean, Dark Souls 3, you're either online or you've turned your system into offline mode, and that's kind of what it is. I'm not wrong, am I, Saul?
No.
I know that Bloodborne had a non-connected way. That's the only game I can think of in the series that has had a single player mode where you were completely disconnected.
No, Bloodborne, you can invade.
Oh, you can invade, but you could also play the game without being online at all. There was offline mode for that game. Like,
well, there's offline mode for all of them.
There is. That's what I was trying to remember. Default. Okay, yeah, because I remember
default, it's on.
And but you're saying you have to go into the settings to turn it off?
Yes, like, well, okay, so like you have to.
So I could just password protect my game, right?
You could do that, or you could just make it so that like if you have friends to play with, you'll password protect it. But if you don't, and you don't play at all, you just go in there and turn it to start in offline mode.
See, Bloodborne has it literally just in the opening menu. You just either click online or offline. So whereas this game makes it a point to show you at the very top right at any given time when you're in your in-between stages, you can just go and click it and you just cycle through. There's 3 options: online mode, friends only, or single player. And you can still get invaded by Juliana on single player, but it's AI, so it's not nearly as difficult. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And it doesn't always happen. Like literally you can go through an entire thing and she just doesn't hunt for whatever reason. But I don't know. I find that so boring. Like that's when the one time you get hunted in the tutorial is AI. And then every other time, if you have online mode, it'll be people. And that's where the goodness happens. So
I'm going to give it a shot.
I hope you do. But I mean, if you don't, trust me, it happens.
It's ActRaiser time, baby.
ActRaiser. Okay, see, next thing up. Sucker Punch continue to support the ever-popular Ghost of Tsushima multiplayer experience, Ghost of Tsushima Legends, with Legends receiving a new survival map this week called Twilight and Ashes. and additional new map is coming Friday as well on October 1st, and it's based on Iki Island. Just good news for you. You don't have to worry about fighting Edward or Jacob in this. It's just, it's just there.
That's good news.
It's good news.
I would love to fight Jacob, the pedophile.
This is the skin of a monster.
He is a monster. He's disgusting. He's a freaking creep.
So, Chris, you know how I loved Twilight because it's the most ironically funny movie I've ever watched. Like unintentional comedy is the best one I've ever seen.
10 out of 10 movie.
I think that me and my wife are going to start binging through all of the Twilight movies.
Yeah.
Because I told her, I thought I'm either going to have a similar situation where every movie is hilarious to me, or the movies will actually get a little bit better.
The movies do actually get better.
From a serious standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if any other film in this or any other scene in this entire film series, of course I haven't seen, but I don't know if anything can match how much I was laughing during the baseball scene.
The baseball scene is an all-time great movie scene.
It is so funny.
Taxi Driver, Twilight, Inglourious Basterds, Interstellar, all same.
Wait, look, guys, wait around until midweek matinee comes back around. We're waiting on one thing, and we should be back around, and I would say around 15 days. We'll see how that actually ends up working.
Yes.
But I'm excited because that's going to be our new thing. Is it's going to be 1 week, it's going to be a Marvel movie, and then the next week it's going to be the next Twilight.
I'm more than happy. I'm more than happy to eschew the Marvel movies and do the rest of the Twilights.
A couple of Twilights in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, next thing up, God of War Ragnarok looks to shake up gameplay by opening up how players handle their loadouts. One way that they want to facilitate that is by including different shields with different defensive properties and abilities. So kind of going all the way down to how you choose to defend yourself, build your Kratos up the way that you want to. I think for gameplay, this could be cool, and it's definitely leaning a little more RPG than the first game. But from a lore standpoint, I'm curious how this is going to play out, because if you remember, the shield is part of that gauntlet he wears on his right arm that his wife gave to him on I think it was the anniversary of the day they met or something like that.
That's cute.
And I'm curious how they're going to play that out. Is it going to be that you're just changing the shield that's inside of the gauntlet or giving it like a different property? Like, are you just basically magically switching it to a different version of the same shield that has different abilities and whatnot? Or I don't know.
I would think something along those lines.
Because the games have always done a really good job of making sure that Kratos' things that he has carry with him from game to game. Like, of course, the Norse mythology is him restarting. But in the other games, if you got like the Golden Fleece or whatever, you would always have that. Like, you had it in 3 from the get-go. So we'll see what happens here. Next thing up, Sackboy: A Big Adventure is receiving the usual Little Big Planet take on Sony exclusives, with Ellie and Abby costumes hitting the game via update today as we are recording. It looks, from everything I can see, that this is 100% free. That's pretty cool. Good game too. Play it if you haven't. And lastly, it's The Last of Us Day, also today. So while we're recording before the reveal of the new content that Naughty Dog teased, we may be getting a look at the new multiplayer game or something else that we'll have to check out afterwards. Quick, both of you, what do y'all think it is? Do you think it's actually multiplayer, or do you think it might be just some story related stuff?
Story DLC.
I hope it's story DLC, because my buddy was telling me about a leak that came out, and if it's called what the leak says it would be the funniest thing of all time. I hope it happens.
Well, now I gotta know, Chris.
The leak was that it was a Tommy and Joel DLC called Brotherly Love. And I was like, that is the funniest thing ever.
Okay, look, to be honest, in a time period where people are mad about how you've handled The Last of Us 2,
yeah,
a good way to kind of get a little bit of brownie points back for the people
here's why.
who did.
This automatically makes me mad. This is not going to give you brownie points.
I think it depends on how it's done.
Yeah.
And actually, doesn't this feel really in line with the Last of Us Left Behind?
Left Behind.
The idea of like, we're going to take one character from this game and go off and have a more intimate story with them and someone else.
I can't say exactly why I don't want it to, or I don't want it to, but I think that's not going to give me brownie points specifically, because I want to avoid this topic entirely without a major spoiler.
I got you. That seems fair.
But I just feel like that.
Hold on, is it the spoiler from the first 10 minutes of the game? Just so we can have that context. And
what do you mean 10 minutes?
Yeah, there's
you know what I'm talking about. I'm being very pedantic about it, but the beginning of the game.
Right.
Okay, so then now that we all know,
Okay, do you mean just proceed on? Well, no, because what I'm going to say is going to spoil the game.
Yes, okay. It's still going to spoil
it's going to just... If that's what it is, then I felt like that could have fitted in the main game better than DLC. I'll just say it that way.
I don't... It depends on the story you're trying to tell.
It does, but like, once again, I feel like... no matter what, I think the story they're going to tell is going to be fantastic.
The story for 2, I don't see how that would have benefited the game. I mean, the only thing that would have benefited is one thing.
Well, you just contradicted yourself, because in my opinion, DLC is supposed to complement the game. So
but it's supposed to be an extra story that this is... The DLC is its own separate story arc, right?
But the way I view a DLC is that the DLC could also fit into the main story at the same time. If it's DLC from the main story, then it could also fit in the main story.
Well, would you consider Left Behind to be main story?
Do I?
Like the first one, Left Behind, the first DLC for the first Last of Us.
Would I consider it part of the main story? I mean, it has to be.
Well, it's part of the game world, but it's not part of the Last of Us 1 story. It's not part of those
it's part of the main story as a whole.
Yeah, everything that comes out, the comic book is part of the main story as a whole. So in that regard, I still think that the game that you make, The Last of Us 2, needs to be the story they're trying to tell, which they definitely did. I don't see how that would actually play into it as part of that game, if that's what you're saying. And if you're not, then I just misunderstood you.
Well, because it's like the Black Cat DLC from Spider-Man would fit the story, but it's not necessarily... I don't think it would have paced the game well.
Well, that's all I'm saying, is that I think that the DLC could have fit in the story. Like no matter what, for me personally, and you don't play a lot of DLC, like, so this is something.
Yeah, I don't.
That we don't talk about often. That. But I think that if you have DLC like Shivering Isles or Knights of the Nine, if it's, in my opinion, if it's good DLC and it's involving the main characters of the main game in any form or fashion, then that DLC could be rolled back into the game somehow and it still work out fine. And that's how I typically like DLCs. Like, I think that, like what Chris said with Black Cat could have been put into the game. Now, that game already had pacing issues, bad pacing issues. Spider-Man did. I
agree.
That game had horrible pacing issues.
Well, okay, but it was all because of one design choice.
It was, yeah, and that's to me is what makes it bad.
It had nothing to do with the actual story. It had to do with the game itself getting its own way.
But the story that it tells at the end of the day could fit into the actual game, right?
You mean the Black Cat, making sure I'm not losing?
Yeah, any good DLC, in my opinion, any good DLC that you tell fits back into the main game well. And if it doesn't, then at that point it's some kind of side. Like, I would consider it a standalone DLC.
Which that does. Standalone just really means that you don't have to have the main game to do it. But
that's what I'm saying.
But fair enough, in the sense, because like a good example of what you're kind of talking about in the way that it doesn't tie back in, because it just
Death of the Outsider
doesn't. Death of the Outsider, which is not even DLC, that's really just a
standalone,
completely different game. But the one that came to mind was Infamous Festival of Blood, and this is not a spoiler at all, because first of all, I don't even know if you can still find and play that game. It was great and I love it, but it was standalone DLC for Infamous 2, where you played as Cole hunting vampires inside of New Marais. And that has zero to do with the main story. And at the end of it all, it's revealed that this was all like just Zeke telling a story to girls at a bar to try and pick up chicks, and using Cole as thing. And I actually really love that. It was really good. But like, let's go back and think of like even the Knights of the Nine thing, right? If you look at Oblivion and use Knights of the Nine, or even the Shivering Isles, I don't think in the middle of which those games are also different because they're not linear games. They are completely open and you tackle them how you want. So let me change. Let's really go back towards specifically The Last of Us 1, because it's a good example of I don't know in the storyline of The Last of Us 1 game and how the game paces that out and gives it to you. I'm not sure that there's any point in that game where you could have just taken every bit of the Left Behind and then just suddenly inserted it there, and it wouldn't have made the game's pacing worse for something that could have been told as a separate.
And I'm not saying throw it in the middle of the story. I'm just saying like that, because Left Behind could have been put at the end of the story.
I mean, I guess it could have, but then wouldn't that be worse than the ending we got?
Chris is trying to get
go ahead, Chris.
I'm trying to get a hold on our conversation here, because the way this conversation is going, it makes me sound like the Joel DLC is the perfect DLC. So I'm very confused on what the issue where
whether or not I think, and Saul, tell me if I'm wrong on this.
Okay.
But I think the conversation that Saul and I are having at this particular moment is about how DLC can work, or in his mind, I think should ideally work,
is that the story the DLC tells can fit into the story that the game told.
So that's what I'm asking is like, why is like what's the issue with the
because
Joel and Tommy potential DLC?
Further clarification, just to make sure, because this is again where my brain is at, and I think I might be grabbing onto something wrong. Are you saying that you literally take the story, the gameplay, every bit of that DLC, pick it up and just put it in the game wherever it be, and that's what you think a good DLC should be? Like it could have been originally included in the original game.
Yes, and that's what it sounds like Joel could be. That's what I'm just saying is that it seems like the Joel DLC, like correct me if I'm wrong, that DLC, the way it's going to be told has to be told as prequel DLC, correct? It can't be told the way the story ends.
I mean, I would imagine that they would do just like Left Behind was prequel. I mean, it's literally just trying to give you more standpoint on characters.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is like that's what I think that would make this DLC like work well. I'm just irritated that it wasn't part of the full game initially.
Well, see, but that goes back to my Last of Us Left Behind thing, where and this is still just my opinion at this point, but I don't, even though the Left Behind story is really good and cool,
it is.
I would hate to have seen that in any shape or form included, unless it was naturally worked in. And even then, I don't know that it would have helped, because it's such a different story, and it's meant between two other peoples and two other people and their connection, and it doesn't play into the major overarching themes of The Last of Us.
I guess the way I should phrase this is that this shouldn't launch separately. Like, I'm not saying throw it into like Act 2 here, like you have to do like Final Fantasy 15 with the way that story works, of like watch Kingsglaive up to chapter 8, chapter 8 finish Kingsglaive here. I'm saying that like this would have been really cool to launch with the game.
So like where 2 is still its own thing, and then you can go off and play this as an extended story,
just like Left Behind.
So DLC,
but Left Behind didn't come until a year later.
Not with the PS4 version.
Yeah, the PS4 version, it was just happened to be remastered. But yeah.
And it seems like this is coming so quickly after that it would feel like that could have come with the game and been like a separate little side thing.
I mean, a year?
Yeah, it's not close.
It depends on how long.
That's exactly how long it took him to do.
I don't know. I'm confused.
Is a very analogous
because we just talked about Spider-Man being horribly paced, and I think The Last of Us 2 is one of the worst paced video games I've ever played. And you want to put more content
and for the same reason as a Spider-Man in terms of one design decision. Like Chris and I talked about, there's one thing you could change about that game to actually improve the pacing, in my opinion. Just like in Spider-Man, you improve the pacing if you just stop having the game tell me I've got to go be Spider-Man.
Give you the freedom to continue on the story missions in Spider-Man. That's literally what would fix that problem.
I see. That's why I don't have that issue with Spider-Man, because I did all the side stuff. So he would say that, and then the next mission would pop because I already did the stuff.
Well, I did a lot of that, but there were still just times where it was like, I've got to swing around for 5 to 7 minutes, screwing around being Spider-Man before it's finally like, okay, I guess we'll let you play the next mission.
But the thing
is, that doesn't bother me. He's Spider-Man. He's supposed to do that.
Well, the problem with that, though, is Insomniac's story was so well done that it would end and it was like, what's Doc Ock about to do? And then he'd get on the rooftop like, I guess I better go upgrade my suit.
Yeah.
No, listen here. Listen. Let me go see what Doc Ock is up to now. I don't want to go upgrade my suit. Yeah, that's so dumb. I want to jump into this story.
It ruined the tension of like, it felt like there was no urgency, because it was like, wait, this doesn't actually happen, but it's like Doc Ock is about to kill a cat. Well, I guess before I go handle that, I'll just go and save a couple people and upgrade my suit. It's like, bro, you could have went and saved the cat. But let's not lose the forest for the trees here.
Yeah. And let's we're gonna automatically just end this conversation in a second. Just keep going, because we did this last episode.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like, in defense of The Last of Us 2, if this was launched sooner or earlier, or if they've obviously had to work on this towards the end of the game or right after,
I would imagine, yeah.
But that would have stopped so much negative criticism for the game, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, that might be true, but I think that can still happen retroactively.
No, I don't think it can. I think that the people, and I'm not going to be that mean about it, but the people that hate the game for the reasons they hate the game are going to hate the game regardless on if they change stuff. Because that's the type of people that those people. What do you mean?
They're not changing anything. They're just adding story. I mean, first of all, this isn't even like, it's just a joke.
It's
I heard, basically.
Entirely, yeah.
But they would change something specific. It would be.
We're gonna have to have this conversation.
It's gonna have to be off camera, yeah. Because,
to that end, we'll move along.
Yes, we'll move along. But that's the people that hate the game for the reason I'm talking about. I'm surprised you haven't picked up on it.
I hate the game for the reason you're talking about.
That's why I hate
purpose on top of it being poorly paced.
But you don't think more of? We'll just talk about it later.
No, I don't.
The one thing I'll tell you right here is that 1 year out, The Last of Us 2 continues to be a divisive game.
It does.
Listen, our audience apparently likes when we fight, so it's
That's
fine
true.
to have an argument.
All right, boys, y'all ready? I'm about to drop an elbow. Hold on, for people who listen only.
Fun fact: if you took
ready,
if you took a nail file and you took it and scraped it across Brett's elbow, it sounds like you're throwing sand in a blender.
It's so bad, and I don't understand. It's the only part of my skin that gets this way. It's amazing. Post a picture to Discord for posterity. Anyway, so if for whatever reason you're a huge Last of Us fan and you want to go buy some new merch, then go do it. You got new stuff because of it always, as usual, being The Last of Us Day. Outbreak Day was a much better name, by the way.
It was.
I don't get that choice from a marketing standpoint.
Also, hold on, that goes for anything, in my opinion. I don't like Spider-Man Day. It could be Web Slinger Day or something, but don't just call it it's lazy. Make it clever.
Yeah, that Outbreak Day sounded so much more fitting, but I guess
it's more universal. I guess people don't inherently think it's The Last of Us.
Maybe weird.
No, I think that's what it is.
I'm sure. It. Anyway, there's new stuff. There's knitted beanies, flannels, rain jackets, some guitar picks, straps, stuff like that. So if you want to go be The Last of Us biggest fan, then you can.
They also announced a statue of Joel that was made by Dark Horse.
Oh, that's pretty good,
actually.
Yeah, that's pretty good looking. Yeah,
$500.
All right, boys. So that leads us.
I'm kidding.
It probably is.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong.
Do you know how much statues cost? It probably isn't because this is the same people that did the collector's edition statue. $200 is actually what I was thinking because I think the Ellie statue separate from the collector's edition, they had a separate one. It was really close with like 130 or 150.
It's 14 inches and a quarter tall. So
yeah, I mean the Ellie statue is fairly large.
Did you move her?
No, I didn't think I did. I may have actually had to put it up. I ran out of room.
Oh no, it was sitting right here. Sitting on a table for a while.
I don't know what I did with it in the long run. It may be back in the box at this point. Oh, it's down there. She's big.
I knew she was behind me somewhere.
She's a big girl. So that leads us to the main topic, which came courtesy of Saul's brain. It's his brain baby. So Saul, take this opportunity.
So I'm
going to go pee. I kind of already know the thing, but just go ahead.
I like hearing about weird, obtuse games because often those appeal to me the most. And I could honestly thank Slay the Spire for that because when somebody told me it's like a turn-based card deck building like RPG, I fell in love with that thought process and then inherently fell in love with the game. So when the trailer for the Dragon Isles came out, the new Yoko Taro game we were talking about, actually, no, hold on. Brett has messed us up.
Uh-oh. Because we didn't do Community's Cake?
Yeah, Brett, we're going to come back. We're going to come back on that. But last week, we asked you guys the same topic we discussed at the end of the show. Do you think Naughty Dog are still working on a new multiplayer of The Last of Us experience? And if so, do you think it'll be a standard multiplayer experience like the original? Or will it aim to go toe-to-toe with COD/Apex with the games as a service model? Can it compete? Over on Discord, one of our buddies... That's the fastest P I've ever seen in my life. One of our buddies and Patreon users, Josh, he says, I think they are doing a big multiplayer game. Will it go toe-to-toe with Call of Duty? No. But it will have a solid fan base and support to get it through. If you jump on The Last of Us Remastered right now, you can get a game easily. And that is something that I actually meant to bring up last episode, but we were running so strict for time, is I do find it cool when the game still has like a niche player base that's still playing. Like there's probably a subreddit dedicated to literally these last like 500 people that are playing this, that somebody that is playing it made. But at the same time, I hate seeing the same people over and over again. We're playing a multiplayer game. It's like Yu-Gi-Oh!
You kind of mentioned that.
On Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, well, no, I'll say I do find it cool. Like, it's cool to think about that the game still thrives because of a dedicated group. It's like Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro. If you're hosting a game, you'll see the same people join over the course of like 4 or 5 different days.
It's true. Yeah. People who are trying to play constantly.
Yeah.
By the way, I realized as I was peeing that I completely skipped it. Well, I was so focused on peeing that my brain was like, just Main topic, go.
I caught you, don't worry. Another Discord and Patreon friend of ours, Safe Dog, he says, I'm sure they have big multiplayer plans underway that Naughty Dog is waiting to spring on us, but Naughty Dog has been hit and miss for me with multiplayer. I really enjoyed the multiplayer for Uncharted 2, but not so much of The Last of Us Factions, which I've heard that a few times.
Dude, Uncharted 2, people love that game.
Brennan loved Uncharted 2's multiplayer, but he hated Factions.
Yeah, and people hated Uncharted. People who loved Uncharted 2's multiplayer
hated Uncharted
3's.
That's what I
Which
heard.
is real similar, dude. PS3 era games were like, from game to game, complete switch up of multiplayer modes. Whereas like Call of Duty was holding steadfast and being like, we're going to have the same game modes, but with like slightly different mechanics within
different
them.
maps and stuff like that.
Dude, Uncharted 3 is nothing like Uncharted 2's multiplayer, and Killzone 2 and 3 multiplayer are vastly different. Resistance 1, 2, and 3 all have vastly different multiplayer modes. It's weird.
Resistance, yeah. Not Resistance, Killzone, but never mind. He goes on to say, though, to each their own. If anyone could compete with Apex and COD, it's Naughty Dog. I think they are good enough to come up with some of the game changers in the Battle Royale games as a service genre, but I think I missed a comma there. But I just question if they want to go this route or stick with some standard multiplayer modes. Let's see. Rude Days.
Real quick on that before we do Rude Days. I think the interesting thing here is I am not 100% sold one way or the other on which one they're actually going to do. I think the majority of last week's conversation internally was that if they chose to go games as a service, how well would it handle? Like, how well would it hold up?
So
I think that I speak okay. Chris, does that sound right? I mean, do you kind of agree? I'm not saying it's absolutely going to be one style or the other. It's just the viability of each one was more of what we were discussing. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and that's what I tried to say all along, like last week, was that, like, yes, they will be successful, but they just won't stand the test of time like these other brands do. Because and
which, I mean, if you want to argue standing the test of time to Call of Duty, then nothing's going to do that, because Call of Duty has been reigning supreme in multiplayer.
I also think that it's Naughty Dog would rather pour their resources into
2006.
Yeah, even if they offload it.
I mean, when did Call of Duty hit big, Chris? You may know the answer to that. Call of Duty 2 on Xbox?
Call of Duty 4, 2008.
I mean, I know it hit real big there, but it was pretty big for 2 and 3 on 360, wasn't it?
2 was massive on 360.
It was big, but it wasn't Call of Duty.
So if nothing else, we're talking like 2006.
It was
right?
a 360 launch game
maybe
that had like online capabilities. Whew. But Rude Days 93, he says they are working on multiplayer, but I don't think it will be a battle royale like Warzone or Apex. It will be a bigger scope than last entry, and I think it'll have some sort of story that is baked into it.
Would love it.
This, I feel, is the best course, because I don't think Sony would want their best studio to be continuously updating a game, especially when you consider how long it takes for Naughty Dog to release new games. I don't want Naughty Dog to become like Rockstar, who we have no idea is releasing their next game and continues to have Grand Theft Auto 5. Well, Rude Days, I think one thing we were discussing is that it is entirely possible that they would offload this to another studio to work on the multiplayer with.
Yeah, I mean, so many studios legitimately do that. That is what would happen. That's not even really a question. If it lasted that long.
I can think of a quadruple A studio that did that. So, I mean.
Yeah, I know we didn't really talk about that, but I guess we can kind of intervene real quick just to fill solid on what's going on. So The Initiative, which is the studio that Microsoft...
I was going to say, do not explain to me who The Initiative.
Quadruple A, for listeners as well.
Okay.
Announced that they are not with an independent studio, with a Square Enix wholly owned studio. Crystal Dynamics is helping to make Perfect Dark now.
That doesn't make any sense, but okay.
Very weird.
It is very weird.
And like Chris and I were talking about, it'd be less weird if they were, which it also wouldn't be announcement worthy if they just had some random third, completely independent studio or Microsoft satellite studio assisting them. But it is almost newsworthy to be like, hey, Crystal Dynamics, who's owned by a completely different publisher, is helping to make a game.
It's objectively hilarious. Anyway,
it is.
It's what it is a cautionary tale as to why you don't let PR speak happen. Because if Microsoft would have never let the words "they're a quadruple A studio" leave their lips, this would not even really matter.
Right. That's absolutely true.
Next entry is we have Sean One Neo. He says it's Outbreak tomorrow night, so I think we'll hear something then. I don't want to say any more because I caused a massive debate last time. Well, hey, if it makes you feel any better, that's what the show is for. Honestly,
yeah, that is true.
We've often said before, like me. Especially with like me and Brett, is that like and this is included with Chris now, obviously, but it's like these debates are not hateful arguments.
No.
We're still all buddies after the show. And I think that, what was it that we and you got into? It was like early. And one of the YouTube comments, I wonder how it'd be hard to find. Somebody could find it, but it was like the YouTube comment was, this show made it 6 episodes and they're going to break up because of this argument. And I was like, did they not realize that like this is all like a conversation that like is done? Like back then we were going to get like food afterwards.
Oh yeah, which is actually exactly what's going to happen today.
It is.
I'm pretty sure at least. But yeah, I think just to clarify on there too, I don't think that means that we leave an episode and aren't sometimes annoyed at each other for something about it. Like Saul, you can tell whether or not this is true or not. I think Chris and I both had a feeling of last week you were a little frustrated because I think that you thought that we weren't understanding where you were coming from.
The only thing that frustrated me last episode, and this is any pet peeve of mine that happens, is like I'll explain an opinion and then it feels like people keep adding on to it of like, why do I have to keep explaining this opinion?
So to that, I think that what happened is, and I think it still came from the fact that you thought that we were misunderstanding or misrepresenting you, is that we weren't trying to add to your opinion so much as we were trying to add things to the conversation that may have pushed against your opinion, added to your opinion, but we weren't trying to say that they were your opinion.
No, I know, but
or at least we weren't intending for that to happen.
Typically, like with me in conversation, especially long form conversations, I'll say my opinion and then stop talking. But you can't do that when people are continuing addressing your opinion. I'm like, I don't know what else to say. I'm just going to keep repeating myself, which is what happened last week.
And then you feel like you're talking in circles because technically you are.
Yeah. So like that's one thing. But anyways.
So we got a couple more here? Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
All right. So these are from Facebook. We got Mr. Danny Candyman Villalobos, one of our patrons. Thanks, man. He says, I'm sure they're still working on it. It'll still play like the first, but I'd imagine they would add more modes to try to make it stand out. Or they'll add a battle royale mode with, I would guess, between 30 to 40 people to make the matches go by faster, as I'm sure people who still play the first multiplayer mode will come and play this one, but it is competing with giants like Call of Duty, Apex, and the likes. That'll be tough considering The Last of Us is much slower paced. My big thing is I still think that no matter what, we're either going to see really big multiplayer maps or we're going to see some kind of a mode that's meant to be like, we drop you into the Seattle map that we've already created. Maybe we edit it a little bit to be a little more multi-story based so that there's a little more verticality to the map. But that would make so much sense to me because of, I'm going to be honest, I don't think that game benefited that much from having that big open area. It was okay. It didn't detract from the game, but I don't think it benefited as much from that as a multiplayer game would benefit from that huge sprawling map with multiple levels and like a bridge and then under sections of the bridge. I think that could make for a really interesting battle royale style game. And if they don't do that, that's fine. But I almost would argue that in their mind, when they're thinking of this through, because they said they were working on multiplayer to some degree alongside the game, that their thought was this could be tweaked some and be used as part of the multiplayer.
Has there ever been a game, like a multiplayer game, that's always online in the sense of it's an open world and that open world is evolving constantly, but it's only evolving because of the players that are online with it? Not like an MMO.
So do you mean in the sense that like what the players do continues to stay?
In a way, yeah.
And like build out? I think I can't put a name on it, but in my mind, I feel like I remember there being a game that what the players did in the world mattered to a degree until a reset happened. I guess to some degree, Rust does that.
Yeah, I guess so.
Until they have a server reset. It's not literally forever, but you have a game state that stays up until a time where they're like, at the end of this week, this 2-week period, whatever it is, the server will reset and you'll start from scratch.
Yeah, because I was thinking about like that open world in Seattle. Wouldn't it be cool, like if the multiplayer, there's like obviously factions like normal, right? But like instead of having Battle Royale, something I think would be interesting is like there is like that way you can explore through Seattle, but it's an online, or it's always online multiplayer too at the same time. So like these people who set up these bases are around. So it's like you're literally as a human playing through with friends or by yourself through this like defunct world of Seattle. And there are people around at almost all times, because it's always online, that are there to defend their territory that they set up.
In a weird way, it would be kind of cool to see Naughty Dog do almost a Sea of Thieves like multiplayer.
That's kind of what I mean.
To where you can be antagonistic toward everyone because you're on a server state,
right? But
you can also help each other if you choose to do so.
And the world can kind of like essentially like you could set up like. I guess it would have like Rust-like elements. Like you take a building, right? And you take a building over,
and you can fortify it.
And you could fortify it in a way or something. And then
so basically, Rainbow Six Siege. I'm going to make sure I get all these windows covered, but
that would be kind of cool. And then events happen throughout the game world, and like actual PvE style events happen, like enemies.
Yeah. That would be kind of interesting, and have it to where it's like there are legit NPCs that still come, so that you can be like a wolf. Thing is coming through this, and it's got supplies. So if the first people, group or whatever it be to take it out, can take the supplies back.
That wouldn't fit in the Last of Us, but that'd be a cool idea just to have as a game.
I think it absolutely could fit in the Last of Us. I think it would actually re-fortify the idea of it being a faction, because I didn't do it as well. I didn't do it to this degree in terms of building toward that. But if I remember correctly, it's been a little while. When you played factions, you chose a side that you wanted to be on, right? Yeah. And then for a seasonal period, you could, whoever was on that team, if they won, that team would do better and get more supplies and stuff. And then there'd be a winner at the end of that seasonal period, right? So you could kind of do that.
I don't think it was like seasonal, but was it weekly?
Or bi-weekly? That's kind of what I mean. Like whatever window they gave it.
It's been so long.
Even if it was once a month, there was a winner. That would be kind of cool. How reality based that could actually come out to be, it remains to be seen. But if we really did want to see something that was like big industry changing from Naughty Dog, I think that could be along those lines. So that's an interesting idea, Saul. I don't know, Chris, you got anything to add to that?
Not really. I think it's going to be a mixture of modes. Like I said, I think this is a full-fledged $70 product. So I think it's going to be a lot more than anyone's anticipating, which was...
Well, that's to Saul's point, too. That kind of gameplay and idea would absolutely make me not scoff 1 second at a $70 price point. Yeah. Because that's an interesting use of things. And if within that, there's still other game modes like a Battle Royale or normal team deathmatch like Factions was... I think that could work.
Right, because interestingly, thinking of the main topic, it wouldn't surprise me if this is almost like ActRaiser in a way, where it's God Sim, you build I can't think of the word, wherever Tommy was, something like that, because I can't think of what the word off the top of my head.
Yeah, I got you.
But you have that, and you're playing the multiplayer to build that up. That's what I think it is.
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken... And I might be. I think there was an Assassin's Creed game that kind of had that idea for multiplayer, where you had for lack of a better word here, because I just can't think, you had a faction that you chose to be part of. And was it 3?
I think so.
And I think it was because I remember that Liberation on Vita had like an asynchronous multiplayer mode that played into that. And you could basically, as you did things, it would go, that would be kind of cool, Chris. Have it to where like you have the top layer faction, but then you actually have gameplay that affects it. You know what that kind of makes me think of? Did y'all ever remember, you may not have played it, but I know that y'all have at least heard of EVE Online, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. During the PS3 era, there was an
Dust
MMO 514. Shooter, yeah, Deuce 514. Deuce, did I just say
what?
That? Dust 514.
Excuse me? Was that also a launch PS4 title?
No, Dust, no, it was already gone by the time PS4 came, if I recall. It may have been around a little bit, but it didn't get a bespoke PS4 version, I don't think.
I might be wrong on Assassin's Creed 3, by the way, just to interject.
Either way, that idea was like, it connected to the EVE multiplayer, and it was aware of what was happening in EVE, but it was still its own separate thing. But because of what was happening in EVE, it would affect what was happening on the ground. Because it was almost like the idea behind Dust was you're going to be the ground troops that you don't normally see doing things in the EVE universe when these conquerors.
Oh, so it's kind of like a ripoff of Warhammer stuff then, because that's what Warhammer does. Warhammer has its main thing, and then it has like, or I should say, this 40K has like this main storyline, but then it has, what are those games like? It's like almost.
There's Vermintide and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, which those are games that are connected, but I think the difference here is that this was an online experience with other online players that connected to a different MMO, and they affected each other.
I want to say though that
which is a cool idea.
The way Warhammer releases products is based around those choices in those games, though.
That's cool.
The data they use.
That's cool.
So, and if it's not that, it's something else involving tabletops.
It's more weird to me that I don't think Dust 514 did very well. Now, whether that was, I played it not very long, but whether that was down to poor gameplay because it was developed by people who typically make, and I may be wrong, they actually may have done a satellite development studio, but if it was developed by the people who made Eve, it may have just not been that it may not have been a very good FPS. It may have been because it released, I think that game came out and like really late though. Wasn't it like a 2013 game?
I think so.
So it was after the hack.
Maybe that's when I played
May 14th, 2013.
Was it free to play?
Free to play first person shooter.
I did download that on PS4.
And it was developed by CCP Games, which I'm pretty sure is a real developer for Eve. Yes.
That might be why I was thinking that it was a PS4 game, because I played it as one of the last PS3 games I had played before I got that PS4.
Yeah, and hold on, let me look right here. It may have gotten a PS4 release. I don't think so. No, PlayStation 3. It did not review well. 5.8 out of 10.
Yeah.
So that sounds like that. But the thing is just because an idea didn't work doesn't mean it shouldn't be tried again. That's
sick.
Oh, that is cool. Is that the exclusive? It's a vinyl.
It's a vinyl, yeah, and it's some sick art.
Yeah, and the soundtrack for The Last of Us 2 is excellent, just like the soundtrack for The Last of Us 1 was. Good stuff. All right, going on. Last thing we got here is from Hussein Saeed. He says, I think they are still working on it, definitely, but they don't have to compete with Call of Duty or the likes of any other multiplayer game. All they need to do is add the Naughty Dog touch and it will be successful, which I think is actually a pretty fair point. And it goes towards something that whenever I was waiting for the video to render back down and I kind of teased what it was with the thumbnail, and of course the thumbnail's provocative on purpose. It showed The Last of Us cut into Apex, cut into Call of Duty, and it said, can factions still compete? And the person asked, does it have to? And he talked about him being an example of like somebody who was drawn in, who doesn't normally play those games. And I'm that exact person. And I said that last week. I don't play a lot of multiplayer, but factions drew me in probably because it was Naughty Dog and I'm a fan of Naughty Dog. So it got me in the door quicker than other games would. Well, and then I stuck around. And if you get a sizable enough chunk of people like that, then I guess it doesn't really have to compete, because it doesn't have to be pulling from those player base. It can actually pull from a bespoke player base that doesn't usually interact with these things, and it might find even long-term success from those people. It's hard to say. So not in the perspective of competing, but I actually brought that up last week with that exact same example, but using Days Gone players. Some people have played Days Gone just because of photo mode. Yeah. And like literally been drawn in because they saw a cool photo and like, I want to do that. Yeah. And like they've gone in and they've like, I actually saw a Twitter user. I can't think of her name. It's a famous screenshot Twitter user, and I'm sure somebody can point her out to me. But she does a lot of in-game photography for stuff like this. And my whole point was like, those player numbers aren't going to multiplayer photo mode. That'd be a terrible idea. It would be.
Are you kidding? That would be awesome.
It would be awesome.
Pokemon Snap, like.
No,
you run around in real time and put photo mode on, and while you're trying to take a quick selfie of yourself, somebody blows your head off at the time you take the picture, so you just get a that would actually be fit sick. In with Borderlands, if anything. I can see that being some dumb stylistically stuff. Yeah, I could see that too. But yeah, it wasn't that the numbers were competing, and that I made the point that it can definitely pull people in for that reason. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that those numbers would be strong to compete. Yeah, that's the hard part to say. Yes. Because, I mean, even if you look at what The Last of Us sold, which I don't know the actual numbers, at one point, the first month, I think it was 4 million. So even if we use that early number, right, 4 million people who may or may not typically play multiplayer may push through and play this. Is 4 million enough? And Chris and I kind of had that conversation of what is a successful number. But we'll have to see. I'm really curious to see what it ends up being. I would definitely take story DLC, but I'm a little curious to see if at the end of all this, are they going to do like what they did with Lost Legacy, where they go, it was bigger DLC, it was bigger than what DLC would be, so we made it a standalone game. Like, do we get in a 2-year window or so, do we get another Last of Us standalone game? That'd be interesting.
Yeah, factions.
Yeah, and factions could meet both of those, right? It could meet the story DLC requirement while being the multiplayer, Yeah. It's possible.
I don't know. It's interesting to me because I think the funny thing is like I think every person got misinterpreted in that argument.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Because my argument was never that it was going to be successful or not. I just thought it was insane to think that Sony wouldn't invest in it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
yeah. And I do remember that being it. Clearly, I think Sony would show that Sony have shown that they're going to invest in Naughty Dog no matter what.
Apparently, they said in a press release that they're announcing something at not a
today.
PT.
Today.
Yeah, that was an hour and 15 minutes ago. They haven't announced anything. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
that's why I was like, wait a second, is my laptop off? Because
yeah, I knew we started recording and whatnot before that, so I wasn't worried about it. We'll see what it ends up being in post time. We'll see. But all right, so Saul, do you want to take us into the actual main topic?
Yes. So, anyways, back onto the main topic. I was talking about how I love seeing these games that play in very oddball, wacky ways. To a new game. So if you could come to me and say, there's this new side scroller, but every boss battle becomes a racing game. I'm like, what? That sounds interesting. I'm going to play that. Or, hey, here's a D&D tabletop game, but it's at the same time it's a card-based dice rolling combat game. I'm like, okay. With a world map like Final Fantasy, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love games like this. Not that all of them are great, but I like the space they occupy in the gaming world. I think that it is it was at one point a very niche space that's kind of growing and growing. And indie titles are the ones that are killing it. And I was curious just to hear y'all's perspective on it. And what are games that have come out of this kind of thought process? And what are some wacky games that don't exactly fit specific genres? That can kind of genre bend and get away with it, and they do it well. And it's inspired, of course, by the Dragon Isles, because that game, we were sitting there watching it, and I'm just like, it is literally a tabletop rendition of a high fantasy story made by Yoko Taro that is also told and narrated like Dungeons and Dragons, but has an explorative world map like Final Fantasy that has turn-based combat.
That still kind of goes towards a tabletop version of D&D, like Pathfinder and stuff, right? Where you move across the terrain.
Yeah, and it's just
which is not typically D&D based. Some people do that.
It's not.
But the moment you start introducing that stuff into D&D, you're really more like Pathfinder. I don't know.
Is it somebody who narrates a story the entire time like they do in D&D?
I don't know. I think Pathfinder may be more of Dungeons and Dragons kind of has that too, right? Where if you're not good at DMing yet, you can literally buy a book that has a DM story where you still control it, but it tells you your outline of this is the scenario, this is what you're doing.
You a script though.
No, it's definitely not a script.
And that's okay.
It's just more of, this is your world, these are your areas, this is your reference point. But so it's like baby's first DM.
In a way, yeah. It's rare we see games do this though.
Yeah,
because technically, Slay the Spire could be a tabletop game. In a way, they could easily make a physical version of Slay the Spire.
I'm glad you brought up. Yeah, I figured they would. So I'm glad you brought up Slay the Spire, because I was going to ask both of you, having not played it.
I'll pre-order it right now.
Of course, there's a similarity of there being. Of course, but of course, there's the similarities between the games of them being card-based battling systems, but how much more similarities could there be with that? Because, of course, the other idea is that Slay the Spire is a card-based turn-based system, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a roguelite. So, in that degree, is that where the comparisons end? When you're moving through it, how much Hades is it? Do you have a playable avatar that you move anywhere at all, or is it?
So you have a playable character that is different because the cards that they have access to are different than the other characters.
Okay, so you select a character at first.
Yes, there's 4 characters, unless there's 5 now. Is there 5 now, Chris? Do you know? There's 4.
5, yeah.
There's 5. Okay, there's 5 now. Because there's a standard 3, and then they had the DLC.
No, okay, there's only 4 then.
Okay. But yeah, you pick them, and then you get the standard deck. It's the same deck. It's the same amount of strikes and defends and these little specialty cards. And then you automatically start in this dungeon and you kind of plot your course out, or you can. Some people don't, but you just plot your course out and you kind of see if I go this way, there's a mini boss here. And then right behind the mini boss is a bonfire, and you can upgrade your cards at bonfires.
For visual purposes, because we've all played this game.
Yeah.
is it an actual physical thing where you see your avatar, or is it more like what Hades does when it zooms out and you're moving between, where like you see the roadmap of here's me starting.
It's you're always you don't control your character at all outside of the cards.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
It's more like you're going through nodes that you're seeing, kind of like when Hades zooms out and it shows where you're first starting, but it's more like it moves you through those automatically. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Gotcha.
So
that's where they're different. I was curious because I still don't know if I'll ever get around to Slay the Spire. It's not because I don't know. It's not even that I don't want to. I don't know where I'd fit that in right now, and the urge is not strong enough for that. But I do think the idea is interesting.
Where Slay the Spire excels is that you can play the same character in like 3 to 10 different ways. Like, for an example, one of the characters that are unlocked in the kind of early part of the game, one of the main characters, I should say, is poison based. Well, there are so many different ways that you can play her because she has like these shivs that cost no resources at all to use. Or you could do like a full-on poison-based build where she has these poison counters that tick up and do damage as they tick. And like you can afflict them with that and just pass turns back and forth and just let them take massive amounts of damage.
So
it's awesome.
Let me ask this.
It is. And you could do that in different ways.
Is the deck something that you have to draw from, or is it more like the idea of a deck in Chain of Memories where you can rotate through your entire deck, but as you use cards, they leave the deck,
so you have to draw.
And eventually
you have to draw because every battle starts with like 5 cards.
Okay.
And then you use those 5 cards and then the turn ends. And those 5 cards go to a discard pile, and then you draw another card. And if you're out of cards in your deck, your discard pile gets shuffled back in.
So in a way, it's kind of like Hearthstone, but with a visual representation
of
what's going on.
Maybe.
I guess
it's a deck builder. It's not
like you build a deck out, but then you're seeing all these things go on with actual characters that are based around the cards. Or
it's not Hearthstone. Like I guess it's Hearthstone in terms of like the mechanics of a card game, but it's not
that's what I mean. Card game mechanics.
If you want like a real world example, just think of how like in the TV show, like Yu-Gi-Oh, where he plays his cards and then the monster does something or the trap card is there.
It pops
That's
up,
all it is.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you're seeing a visual representation of what the cards just really are doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like,
Saul's got it on his computer. I actually forgot
you
about
start
that.
as Ironclad, and then like your deck as Ironclad is the exact same as
every single time.
Every single time. And eventually you're going to unlock more and more stuff that you can use, like choose a card to obtain 3 random potions. You lose all your gold, you could obtain a random rare relic. So
I mean this in a completely, because I'm looking at Saul's screen, and I don't mean this in a bad way at all, because I actually like this.
He's going to mean something in a bad way, Chris. Get ready for it.
I promise
I'm
I
ready
don't.
for it.
I don't. But I could see someone thinking I'm saying this as a hit, and I'm not, because I like the way I like the way that game looks, and by chance I like this one. The art style for this makes me think of Adventure Quest. And I actually love Adventure Quest.
What is Adventure Quest?
You'll either know or you won't. It was a browser-based game where you built out your character, and
that game, Chris, Google this game. Tell me this game looks nothing like this game.
Dude, the way the animations look, which this is also not a video.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say you're showing me a picture,
and this is clearly even earlier. So I just mean the style in which the character placed in the thing looked. It gave me this vibe.
It actually looks like that awful limited run games original game, the Magical Trapper Keeper game.
Oh,
that game was actually that wasn't an original limited run game, was it?
It was called Magical Trapper Keeper?
No, it's not called that, but that's what the item was. Saturday Morning RPG.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought you were talking about. I didn't. Yeah, I never played it, but Saul got a code and played it.
I don't think it ever. I sent it off to them. They never. But like this is what the map looks like. So you can plot your course and like you can figure out like here's a mini boss, here's a bonfire. At a bonfire you can rest and retain health.
Oh, so you get to choose where you go.
Or
like you have different forks.
Or you could upgrade a card for free. So like if you click here, it's obviously a battle. So your cards pop up here, and I'm on slow mode. And then you have all 5 of your cards you can use, and you have your energy here, and you use energy to do attacks. And that's kind of it. Like,
gotcha.
Eventually it gets way more complex like any roguelike does. But not to stay on Slay the Spire too up much, but I want to hear games that y'all think that are fun to play. That game looks nothing like this game.
I'm telling you.
Looks.
I'm not saying it's exact. I got vibes, but yeah, okay. So that's an interesting thing. Yeah, and you're right. Indies are doing this a lot, but at the same time, I think there's other games that do this in the AA or have done this throughout the years in AA space, right? And some of them I even brought up earlier. Like, I think Overlord is such an interesting idea for a game because it's not even that it's a single genre, which I think is kind of the idea across all these, right? Is it's multiple genres smashing together. So, like, Chris just downloaded ActRaiser. I think, arguably speaking, ActRaiser is more interesting than just a God Sim or just a side-scroller 2D fighting game because it's both. Not necessarily at the exact same time, but that you have facets of each, right?
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So what I'm kind of thinking of there is like Overlord is the same idea, like I talked about earlier, where it's a fantasy action RPG for all intents and purposes, I guess, or at least like a fantasy action game. But then it has this layer of, if you want to call that a God Sim, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, that extra layer of you're going to control some sort of minion and they're going to do what you want them to do. To that degree, I think those games are interesting. And it's also what I like about a good example of something I talked about a while back where I would like to see Sony take its IP and just do weird, daring things with it was kind of like we talked about Chain of Memories. Chain of Memories is a great example of taking a game that has an idea, like a normal formula, and completely turning it on its head. So Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories was like suddenly this normal action RPG, action JRPG, whatever you want to call it, is now a top-down third-person isometric game that almost looks like it's kind of like Final Fantasy Tactics in the way that you run through it. Yeah. And then you have this weird door mechanic that's built into that. And then in combat, it's a side-scrolling, almost looks like a fighter, but it's like a side-scrolling individual area based, and you roll through a deck. I like ideas when games come together like that, and that's clearly a bigger game. But then you have which Square has a lot of examples of this, because you have Nier.
Yeah.
And like you talked about, this stuff is coming back around because Nier was kind of not really loved for the fact that it genre bended often. And yet that's one of the things that people really latch onto about what they like about Nier Automata.
I think that is one of the factors that makes those games masterpieces.
Yeah, because it interests you in a very different way.
And it does it in a just such a phenomenal way.
Yeah. Chris, you got any games that you like that you feel like are just odd out there genres or mashups of genres?
Not a ton, but I am thinking of how fun NFL Street is. I don't know if any of you played that, but that's a NFL football game, but also an RPG.
Whoa, what?
It's like a fighting. I say fighting. It's like a
fighting game.
You play. It's basically NFL Blitz, but you play like a story between the games, and I think it was really fun. Wasn't good, but it was fun.
On GameCube,
but it was an idea that could be done in a good way.
Yeah, it's like if 2K cared about NBA more than making money. That's what they do with their story mode. It's just not good.
Well, what's interesting, and because there's plenty of games that I love that I feel like the reason you remember them is because of how odd of a take they were. So I think Saul knows this, but there was multiple versions, so maybe not. And I may be thinking of someone else. But the Sims games have always been the top-down, build your house out, and then you're just watching people do stuff and having some light influence in what's going on, right? But one of my favorite Sims games of all time was Sim 2 Herbs Sims in the City.
Yes. I like that game.
But specifically the Game Boy Advance and DS version.
I don't know what you're talking about anymore.
You had full control of your character and you just walked around this city.
You made your own character, and then you would explore everything.
You could go around to the entire city, room to room. You had complete control of your character. And it was almost like a collection of mini games that you do to earn. It was jobs, and that's how you made money. But there was a story built into this. So unlike Sims games, where the normal Sims games don't have a story, but this game had a story. Daddy Big Bucks is going through and trying to buy the whole city out so he can make some kind of big over thing. Oh, I know, dude, it's super tongue in cheek and stupid and over the top. But I love the game, and I even replayed it not that long ago. By playing the DS version, which is the exact same as the Game Boy Advance game. It just looks a little bit better and has added functionality in the bottom screen. I love that game.
And you could be like a Ratman in that game too. There was like a character that was
on the DS version. You could be Ratman.
Yeah, of like Batman.
I still have the DS version sitting in there. I just don't have a DS to play.
It's phenomenal.
But I love that game. I got it on Game Boy Advance way back, and then I ended up actually playing the majority of it on PSP through an emulator, and then I replayed it again on DS. That game is such a weird idea of mashups that it sticks in my head way more than any other Sims game. And I've played other Sims games. It's just none of them mattered to me besides that one.
Mm-hmm.
Which, another good example is Rune Factory. I loved Rune Factory 4 because it's everything that most people like about Harvest Moon. And I guess to some degree, Stardew Valley. But on top of that, you still farm and do pretty much everything you do there. And you still have relationships with everybody where you go around and talk to people and can get relationship interest and friendships built up and you gain things off of that. But then at the same time, it's a top-down, almost like a Zelda-like RPG where it's top-down, you have boss battles and you run around the map and fight them. And it's awesome. I love that.
I guess I'm a fool for anything that genre bends in any way and does it well enough. Like, I love when movies go from comedy to horror, and I love when stuff like that happens, because if it's done well and the transition works out well, then it's just a great experience for me. And like Slay the Spire being what it is was it never felt gimmicky at all. And sometimes stuff like this feels kind of gimmicky.
I mean, I could definitely see that. I'm trying to see NFL Street and kind of get this idea of what Chris is talking about. So is the game always still football, but there's stuff that's going on within it? Or do you actually walk around and do?
I don't remember if you walk around. I just know that there's a story and you play a specific character and you go through and like actually have like stuff outside of that can affect you. Because I remember like there'd be stuff like, do you take steroids? This affects you in this way. Do you punch a reporter or whatever, that kind of stuff.
Well, that kind of reminds me of what Andrew and other people have talked about, what they love about the NCAA. Or am I thinking of the right thing? Is it NCAA? Whatever, the college football games, where he said like there's ideas of RPG in there where it's like whether or not you get to keep playing is based on if you choose to study or if you choose to practice and train, and those things go into different ways, and you can get it to where you actually fail a test and can't play a game. Like that extra layer of weird stuff does come into play. And definitely changes the way that you think about those. So that's a cool idea. I'm trying to think of other weird games that really have this line between different genres.
I'm trying to think. There was a game at one point that became a horror game.
That became a horror game?
Yeah, like it was like you're playing it and it's just a normal game, and then all of a sudden it's like the atmosphere completely changes.
Doki Doki Literature Club.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, it is.
Okay, I'm about to say, yeah.
Yep.
We talked about that too. Chris is talking about playing it. We talked about maybe doing a spoiler chat on that.
I'd still like to do that. That game rocks.
I think we could probably do that. I still haven't played that game, but I've heard interesting things.
That game's not on PlayStation, is it? Because there's stuff that... Is it? Okay.
I thought it was. Yeah.
I'm curious as to how it does certain things. Because like certain ways that game... Like, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been like 3 years since I played it. I played it when it came out. Isn't... Like, you have to dig through File Explorer, don't you?
Mm-hmm. It's all in there. It's just you play the game from a computer in the game.
Oh, okay.
See, now that goes into weird ideas of like what was that game called? A Lost Cell Phone or something?
Oh, dude, that game's phenomenal.
That game is so
the mobile game?
Yeah, a normal lost phone.
Yeah.
And everything about that game is weird because it's just you basically going through a virtual phone.
Yeah.
In a way,
I like that game.
And it almost ties up like the way you play it on a phone, the medium that like you're playing it as is fantastic.
Well, yeah, because you're playing a fake phone on your real phone and going through all this stuff. Another interesting game that I really want to play, but I haven't gotten around to it yet because I'd have to hook up some kind of a webcam. I guess I could try and play it on my laptop. There's a game that I have to think of the name of real quick.
What does it use, your webcam or something?
Yes. It's a game where it gets facial recognition, and you do it, and it's called Before Your Eyes. And what happens, it's really new. It just came out this year. It's a game where time doesn't pass in the game world until you blink. Like stuff happens, but once you blink, whenever that is, the game moves forward a certain amount of time.
Oh, that's weird.
And you don't get to see what happened the rest of the way. And you have like these really weird fractured memories, and everybody experiences the game different based on when you blink. And that's a really cool idea. And to Saul's real degree, I actually think indie games on PC, and as often as we talk about phone not being used for very interesting games, because it's so just built up of games that literally everyone's played before, there are times where people are using the idea of phone like a normal lost phone and doing something so strange and interesting that pulls you to want to do it. And PC gets that a lot too. I don't think console gets that as often, and that's a shame. But it's also because
the limitations.
How are you going to? I mean, you could, I guess, hook a webcam into a.
It's just the limitations of the medium. Like it's kind of like what I was talking about with Doki Doki. It's like Doki Doki is interesting in the way because it's like it's designed for a computer, because like the stuff you do in that game, and the kind of the workaround they did with PlayStation, like Chris just said, is you're kind of on a virtual computer in a way in there, and like stuff with webcams. I don't know. It's weird. It's because that specifically peripheral stuff is definitely more lesser seen.
Yeah, sure. Well,
unless it's like microphone based, which PlayStation could actually excel at.
Yeah,
and they have.
I think they could too. But there's also games that have been done from big people. Like, have any of you played Spore?
Yeah,
Spore's awesome.
Nah,
super weird game.
It's weird, but
it's a time where if you looked at me right now and said, "Hey, did you know that EA did Spore?"
You wouldn't. Yeah,
you wouldn't immediately think it. But that
me.
actually leads us to the game that Chris was talking about before we started recording, Lost in Random.
Yes.
Where that is an EA original, and that is not a game that as soon as I saw it, I would have thought, yeah, that's EA. And that's a really interesting idea of like a game where you run around third person action adventure, but then all of your actions throughout the game are based off of cards, very similar to what we talked about with Chain of Memories. I think that's a really odd way of going about it, but it's cool. I like to see that kind of stuff. So I think, if there's any other games, because I think what I want to do here is us give you game suggestions that are weird that you may not have heard of and want to experience.
That's kind of like that's
a two-way street, baby.
Yeah, that's kind of what I had in mind thinking about the topic, because I absolutely love when it comes to this kind of stuff, because like we were talking about, these kind of games could be so niche. Like, I'd never heard of Slay the Spire like when I played it, but that game had a fairly decent player base for it.
Yeah, sure.
But it's just one of those that it passes under your radar. And I'm curious as to hear like if people have recommendations. Honestly, I'm going to go ahead and take this one step further as well and ask the same thing, but for movies. Like, have people watch some movies that do that too, like where they genre bend? And
Malignant.
I'm really, dude. Honestly, okay. Malignant does do that in a way, but it's
also a genre-less movie almost.
Yeah, it also is not scary or thrilling at all.
But then again, isn't that the thing? Anytime a game genre bends or anything, right? Doesn't it technically become genre-less? It's not that it's genre-less. It's that so many genres that you don't want to overly give one to it. But then again, I think even games like Nier, right? Nier Automata and the original Nier are known for being genre bending, but their core genre is always action RPG.
Yeah. And I think that's important too.
It's how it stems off of that.
It keeps an identity along genre bending.
A game we didn't talk about that I don't know that either of you have played. I honestly just can't remember. I talked to so many people about this game off and on, but they do genre bend, and I think it's important to how the games play off. I think it's true of both of them, but I only beat the first one, and I meant to play the second one. I still haven't. Need to go back and do that. The Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay.
Yes.
That game starts as like a action adventure puzzle game
in a weird way.
And as you progress through, at a certain point, the game suddenly becomes like a stealth action game.
So that game there is the only iteration of like a movie game that I really loved.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best movie games I've ever played. And I think about that game all the time because it was super interesting. And it also took the idea of like, make sure we bring in Vin Diesel, make sure the character looks like Vin Diesel. Let's make this feel like this is just an extension of that world.
This Vin Diesel looked better than the Fast and the Furious Vin Diesel that just came out.
You ain't wrong about that.
Actually, it did. Back in 2004, definitely the PC version.
For
it
an
looked
Xbox
fantastic.
game.
Yeah, the Xbox version still looked good. I played the PS3 version when they remastered it as part of Assault on Dark Athena.
Yeah.
And I got so caught up in that game that I beat it, and then I felt like I'm done. But there's an entire other game on that disc. I bought the game for a completely different game.
Chronicles of Riddick, I would say as a whole, is a very niche name.
It is, definitely now. I mean, it was very big, and then,
That's that's like Firefly. That's a really cool, like, original world that I wish was explored, that had more opportunities to be explored more on.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so that's kind of the crux, I guess, is like, I want to hear genre bending stuff. And it doesn't even have to be like whole games that half of it is like a puzzle game, that half of it is a stealth game, like we were just talking about. I think that it's interesting just to hear good instances of games that do it randomly and do it well. Like, unexpected stuff like that is great.
I mean, I'm looking at a list out of curiosity just to see what kind of stuff I do and don't know of at all.
How does that work?
I think it's fair to say that is, because in many ways it's a walking simulator game.
Death Stranding for people.
Yeah, so Death Stranding is on somebody's list here as a game that defies genre of classification.
Okay, that, yeah.
And I think that's fair, which is kind of what we talked about a second ago, right? When you genre bend to a degree, you start to hit this idea of like, well, it's a little harder to completely give it a classification.
I'm specifically, or I was specifically, this, not saying this is off the table, people can give us examples like this too of genreless games, but in my mind, I'm specifically thinking of games that go from one genre to the other, which I don't think Death Stranding really does. I think that it's hard to classify what it.
I don't know, because I think that the majority of Death Stranding is a walking simulator and like a fetch quest simulator, as weird as you want to call that, and it's all about that. And then suddenly there's parts where the game is very heavily
combat oriented.
Suddenly a very competent third person shooter.
Yeah,
and apparently that's even better in this.
I guess to be fair, though,
PS5 version,
the way that game works is that could be a heavy third person shooter at any point you want it to be. Because the way that game works is that like you could technically just take one package and then go and specifically fight off guys in the yellow suits. What are they called?
I actually can't think of it right now either.
But like that's something that it looks like there's actually more of in the director's cut, is more combat sequencing, which I thought was good because I think Kojima does combat really well.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I guess speaking of Kojima, Metal Gear Rising. That took a series from like from stealth espionage, like third person or isometric depending on the game, to a literal platinum hack and slash game.
Which is nuts. Yeah, that's true.
I love that game too. By the way, that game is fantastic.
I'm curious to see other people's examples. I mean, I'm not going to act like there aren't games on phone that are doing this, because like I can't think of the name of the game, but there's a game on phone where like it's a three-way match game, kind of like Bejeweled, but as you do it, like you fight with those. So like you match.
Cool. I know what you're talking about.
Combat. I can't think of the name of the game right now.
It's not Puzzle Quest, right? That's not it.
I don't think so. Let me see.
Animal
Phone
Farm
game where.
Actually, no. Animal Farm is a book.
Match.
It's Orwell, brother.
What is the Farmville? I was like, what is the Facebook farming game? It definitely is not Animal Farm.
All right, let's see if this is it. Puzzle Night. It might be it. I don't think it is though.
You're talking about. It has JRPG style art, doesn't it?
Yes, and you do multiple. I just can't think. It's a match 3 or tile matching, whatever you want to call it, and then it goes into like an RPG. Let's see, phone game match 3 RPG. See if we can find it that way.
I saw this.
Gems of War. I think that's it.
See, that doesn't ring a bell, but then again,
I'm gonna look it up real quick.
Gems of War.
Gems of War. So I don't want to overly go across and act like this stuff doesn't happen to some degree in other stuff. Like phone games often do very weird things and are interesting because of it. But yeah, it's interesting. That's literally the best thing you can say. I think Gems of War is it.
Also, this goes back to like whenever I had my Nexus 7 tablet, the best tablet ever launched, by the way. But something I noticed, because back then I was intentionally trying to find more games to play on like my Nexus tablet, I will say this much: there is a ton of there's so many games on app stores, right? Because you could literally release thousands of them as one publisher, especially on Android, and not have to worry about them getting taken down for any reason.
Yeah,
but there's so many like hidden gems, like card games, like literal, like I'm going to battle like this NPC kind of card game, and they work so well for what they are. I don't know what that is. That looks like
maybe this isn't it, but I think it's what I was
trash.
thinking.
Look at that font they're using in that game.
It's a phone. You got to be able to read.
No.
All right. Well, I guess, does anybody have anything else they want to add before we wrap the show off?
No, I mean, I'm thinking the other game that came to mind was Naughty Bear, and I don't know if that really counts for what we're talking about here.
Oh, man. I haven't heard of that game.
I can kind of see what you mean.
I love Naughty Bear.
I would argue that Naughty Bear is almost a horror game.
I got Naughty Bear pennied out, I think.
Oh, really? Yeah, Naughty Bear is a crazy game. Super broken in a lot of ways. The game was... Did it ever get a patch? I don't even know if it did. That game was so buggy.
Multiplayer still works, though, so...
Bro, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's peer-to-peer, so it runs still.
Oh, cool. That's good. I'm really glad when games don't have to worry about that. They just have somebody be a host of themselves.
Yeah. I absolutely got this game pennied out.
Naughty Bear is super fun. That's one of the best PS3 games in a weird way.
I never played it except for once ever at our buddy's house.
Well, all right, guys. I guess that means that our call to action to you this time around our community stake is going to be for you to give us your little weird niche genre mashing games.
What is Google Images? Why does that pop up?
I almost want to put that in Discord. So, Chris,
yeah, I'd like
save that to your phone so that when your wife goes through
I'm going to screenshot this so that I can. One thing I like about iPhone screenshotting is like I can screenshot it, send it from the screenshot, and then delete it all in one go, all in one screen.
Anyway, give us your niche games that you love that you felt like genre bended and kind of fit into the classifications of what we're talking about. That way we have some new games to look at and potentially play. That's a good time. Sounds like a fun thing to do. So I'm glad that we got to do this and kind of talk about that so that hopefully we get a lot of good stuff from you guys. But remember, if you want to support the show, head over to patreon.com/Nartech. We thank all of our patrons who already do. You guys are awesome. And without further ado, I think we guys will see you next time for episode 231. So guys, thanks for joining me, and we'll see everybody next week.
Thank you all.
Big shout out to our patrons, Ham and Egger, Bailey Robertson, Rob Wartpoint, Josh Drago, Mark Schutz, Cypher Primus, Jason Clendenning, Kyle Grimm, Richard Schaefer, Brood Days 93, Joshua Lago, Landis, Kevin Bacon Bits, Luke Rabbit, Danny Villalobos, Solitary Red, Jehudi MD, Sean, Josh Ayers, Derek Porter, Corey Hickerson, Constantly Kenny, Matthew Green, Sean Sanderud, The Stonard, Josh Jarrell, Steven Salazar, Shadowist, and my name is Dan. Thank you.
Thanks.